going. So today we are going to look at the constructor and the destructor. We shall also look at modifiers now, or access modifiers. Now, in the previous session we looked at classes and objects. Today we are looking at constructor and destructor and item number 4, which is the access modifiers. So let's go through a little theory here. A constructor is a function that PHP executes automatically when an object is created from a class. We said what makes OOP, or object-oriented programming, are two fundamental things: the classes and the objects, whereby the classes are the blueprints of objects. Objects can also be called instances. So, and we looked at some few things like properties and methods. If you did not watch the last video, you'll find it in the description below. So today we are looking at another concept which is known as constructor, and we are saying that a constructor is a method in a class that gets executed automatically when an instance is created from a class. So it is commonly used to initialize the properties of an object when the object is created. So I would like us to take a look at some code so that we understand this properly. Now I'll go over here and I'll create a file. I can call this file maybe constructor.php. So here we create the PHP, and what we are going to do is create a class. To create a class, you use the class keyword, and we shall call this class constructor. That's if the word constructor is not a keyword, or to be sure, I'll just call it my constructor. Then here we can create a constructor. The constructor is created with the function keyword, then 2 underscores and the word construct as under parenthesis and the curly brace. So since this will be invoked at the creation of an instance, we can just echo something here like my class object has been created. Now this is the class, but you see the moment I saved, I've gotten an error, and this error, I don't know what it is. Oh yes, the mistake is here. The classes do not have parentheses on them, so I have to delete it. And then here down I'll create an object. Now I can create an object using the new keyword my constructor, like that. Yes, I have not I have to put, you see, I have not created a variable. I've not created a variable simply because there's nothing to return from the class, so I can leave it as it is. But if I want to reuse this class, I have to then assign it to a variable. So I'll open the terminal to test, and I'll run PHP constructor.php, and you can see the word my class object has been created, has been printed out. It has been printed out without us calling anything else, simply because the moment we create this object here, the the constructor is invoked. This will be executed at the creation when, not at the, when the object is created. Creation of the object and constructor will be executed. Yes, so that's it. And the difference, there is something else. Let me first go back to the slide so that we see that. So there's something known as a distractor, and this is a special method that is automatically called when an object is no longer needed or when it goes out of scope. So the distractor also has uses or importances. For example, it can help you to clean up any unnecessary actions before an object is destroyed. It is very important because it allows you to release some resources that might not be required. For example, you may have like some methods that connect to a database, some file handle creations, networks, network sockets, so on and so forth, that you may want to close at a certain moment. So what happens with this is that when a distractor is called, you can release all of these resources so that your PHP application can perform faster. Of course, we are going to look at this. A distractor can also be used to perform any further finalization tasks, such as logging or auditing. So for example, if you want to check how fast some method runs, the distractor is a good place to do that. If you want to save some things in the logo file, the distractor is an important place to be, so on and so forth. However, it's not mandatory, so you don't need to worry about destroying objects in PHP, because PHP has a garbage collector which handles memory leaks. However, it's good to know about the concept so that whenever you have a use case for it, you can use it. In some programming languages, the distractor and the constructor are necessary. They are a requirement. But in PHP, they are not. So let's go to code and see how a distractor would work. So we are going to create here a file, and we shall call it distractor, and we see. And I'll copy all of this code from here and take it to distractor so that I can reuse it. Now at the top here, I'll put the function, and just the same way we create the constructor, the same way we create the distractor. So we just say distract, and these are two underscores, okay? And we can now put something. For example, we can put echo my class object has been removed, something like that. But what I'll do, I'll put here a new line character and here, so that these lines can be printed on different lines. Then instead of calling this my constructor, I'll say my class, just or my test, one of the, yeah, something like that. Then here I can invoke this, so we can now test it. You see that the distractor is at the first method, and the constructor is the first method. But because the destructor, I did this so that we can see the order in which both of these functions or these methods are executed. In the implementation, the destruct is appearing as the first, and remember PHP executes line by line, but we are going to see what will happen. So I'll clear the terminal. Let me try to make it a little bigger, and then go ahead, php my test.php. So could not open a file. Oh yeah, the file is called the destructor. Sorry about that. .php. You can see that my class object has been created, my class object has been removed. Now that is to tell you that the order in which the this means that the order in which the constructor and destructor are created is that, or executed is that, the constructor is executed first and the destructor is executed at last. All right, let me hope that is clear. And we can now go on to something else, which is the access modifiers. Having looked at the constructor and destructor. But before we do that, let's look at another use case of a constructor, which can be initial. No, let me bring the human class again. We used this in the previous session, but it's not wrong to use it again. So I'll get the destructor, the constructor out of way. So the constructor can be used to set, the constructor can be used to initialize to initialize the properties of a class through using parameters. So in other words, the constructor can be used to allow a class to accept arguments. So if we have human here as a class, we may have public name, we may also have public city, and then we can have a function which is a constructor, construct. Then inside here we can put in our parameters. Now these parameters will be used at the object initiation or initialization. So here I will just set this name equals to the name that we shall get through the argument, and this city equals city. Then what I'll do here, write a function get name and make it return this name. Then we can duplicate this code and get city, return city. Now we can see here, we can call this function, we shall call it human, I'm gonna call this one John equals to human. Then I can pass in the arguments at this stage, and I'll call this person John Doe, city Kampala. So now I can echo John get name like that. Here I'll echo new line character to just create a line at the terminal. If you were previewing this in a browser, you would put there a PHP, an HTML break line. Yes, get city. So let's test this one out. PHP human. .php. Call to undefined function human. Nice. So yes, because here instead of using the new keyword, I invoked a function instead of initializing an object. These are mistakes you have to really get used to and learn to solve them. Voila, this has worked. So we've used a constructor to initialize the variable name and the variable city, and as opposed to what we did last time. If you check the previous video, you find that last time we set this using a setter method, but the constructor saves us so much time of creating many other functions or methods of a class. All right, so that's a beautiful or an amazing use case. So if you had like database connections, I would encourage that you put them here. File handlers, database connections, and things you can do here. So network socket initializations, all of those can be done from here. All right, in the constructor. So let's take a look at something else, which is the access modifiers. So I'll create here something and a file called access modifiers. By the way, the file, I'm just calling it that name. All of these I've called them these names, but these names I'm just coming up with them. So you should not think that these are mandatory file names. Now let's take a look at access modifiers. Before we look at them, let's go back to our slide here. So access modifiers, properties and methods can have access modifiers which control where they can be accessed. So you know that a property is a variable in a class. A method is a function in a class, and PHP supports access modifiers on these properties and methods, just like other object-oriented programming languages. So PHP supports 3 types or 3 categories of access modifiers. The first one is the public, which is also the default. So what the public access modifiers mean is that the property or the method will be accessible in the given class, the class inheriting the class, and outside the class. Then, or from everywhere. Then the protected will protect the property and the method so that they can be accessed within the class and by classes derived from that class, or the classes that inherit from this class. We shall see inheritance in the next session, but for now, just understand the term protected. or the access modifier protected. Now the access modifier private will only allow the method or property to be accessed within the class. It cannot be accessed anywhere else. So without further ado, let's take a look at that, because we can only say much. The best is practical. That can show us what we mean. So we're gonna have a class here. Excuse me. We're gonna have a class here, and it's going to have public name. Wait, what am I doing? So we're gonna have a class called employee, and inside it we shall have public name, protected phone, and private salary. Okay, then we're gonna use the constructor to initialize these. Okay, how we shall initialize them? We shall use the constructor, which is construct, and say we have name, phone, and salary. Then here we are going to say that this name equals to the name we shall pass via the argument. Then this phone equals to the phone we shall pass via the argument, and this salary equals to the salary that we shall pass via the argument. Now over here we shall create some 3 functions, which one of them is get name, which is going to return the name. Then we shall duplicate this all the way to get phone, and get salary. Yep. So now we can create an employee here. Employee equals to new employee. Since we could use the constructor, we can pass the arguments at this stage. So the employee, we shall call him Janet. Then the phone number, we can say 0700, all that, and salary, we can say maybe 1.75 M. Then here we can start accessing the properties via the methods get name. So echo get name, then here echo new line, and echo employee get phone, then echo new line, and echo employee get salary. So we want to see what will bring the error and won't. We expect that I made a mistake here. we expect that private protected are accessed differently, and these methods here are public because by default, if you don't specify an access modifier, PHP will substitute that with a public access modifier. So these methods, all of them are public, but what they are returning, it's only the name which is public. The phone is protected, the salary is private. So let's go ahead here and run PHP access modifiers .php. You can see that these things have been displayed. However, let me just try a new line character here before I explain. There's some, yeah, so let me try again. All right, so I was telling you that we've been able to see Janet, the phone number, and the salary, and we are saying them because the methods we are using to access the protected and the private are actually part of the class. And we said by definition, if we go back to here, the protected property or method can be accessed within the class and by classes derived from that class. Private, the property or method can only be accessed within the class. So this means that because we are not implementing inheritance anywhere, we cannot say that get salary is outside the class because it's part of the class and it is working properly. Where it would not work is if we start implementing inheritance. So we can also change this to private if we want to see, and this to protected just to see, and this to public, because I said whichever doesn't have an access modifier explicitly specified, that is a public method or public property. So now we've changed this. Will it run? Let's see. You see, now things have started not working. You see, Janet has been output, but fatal error, unquote, quote, protected method, employee get phone from global scope. So I cannot call this get phone outside this class because I've made it protected. The moment I change it, is similar actually. If, for example, if I had come here and said employee dash phone, if I had done this, what would happen is that still I would get an error because I would be accessing, no, just excuse me, I don't know what's happening to the terminal. Let me open it again. Okay, yeah. So I can go ahead and run this and we shall see that still, wait, no. I made a mistake. This is not a method. This is just a property. So phone, let's run this again. You can see it says unquote error cannot access protected property phone in this on line 30, and you can see that this is line 30. We are trying to access employee in the global scope, not in the class scope. So I think you've gotten to know that when we are talking about the class scope, we are talking about from line number 2 up to line number 24. Everything we put outside the class is either global or local to another function or class. So that is an example of protected of access modifiers. Anything that is protected and private has limitations, it's just like you can say I have a fence on my house and you also have a house. So people who are inside the house can see the things in the house, okay, but people inside the fence cannot see things in the house unless the house is transparent. And the people outside the fence cannot see whatever is inside the fence and inside the house. So we would consider the fence to be private and protected to be anything which is in the inside the house. Now the public would be anything that is outside the fence, that anyone who is outside the fence can see it. Yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching. If you are new to this channel, subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. If you have questions, comment on the video, and if you want to watch the previous videos, the links are in the description below. See you in the next.